Good evening, Schoolhouse.
Hello, Craig.
Hi.
Hello, Jeff.
Hello, everyone.
Jeff, at some point you'll have to describe to us what that room is. It looks like it's a spaceship.
My panic room.
Closet where he plans the invasion of Russia from France. I mean,
All right, yeah. I lament my greatest regrets.
It looks like you could be in like a rail car too, like
Yeah.
traveling across Europe.
Well, here, I'll give you a quick tour. So, okay, it's a storage room. The bottom of our house stays reasonably warm. So you can see there's the sub panel is here behind me. Look over on the other side of the room. There's our head end for some of our audio visual equipment. Some storage down the other way. Could turn this into a shooting gallery if I guess I wanted to, but mostly it's just a quiet place. I don't have a lot of quiet places in the room where there's no one else around, so it's sort of a place where I can be here and no one else makes a lot of noise and no one hears me talking. So that's the place.
Love it.
Not nearly as interesting as you thought, I'm sure.
okay, it is 7 o'clock. So if we're all ready, we will begin. Melissa, could you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Derwin,
Here.
Councilmember Alves,
Here.
Councilmember Richards,
Here.
Vice Mayor Wernicke,
Here.
Mayor Hughes.
Here. Okay, first item on our agenda is oral communications. If there is anybody here who would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda, please use the Zoom raise hand feature to raise your hand and we will call on you. And I see Carolyn Vertongen's hand is up. Go ahead, Carolyn. Carolyn, you don't appear to be muted, but we can't hear you. Nope, we still can't hear you. There are a couple other hands up, Carolyn. So maybe, I know often you call in, maybe you're having audio difficulties on your computer. If you want to try calling in, we will come back to you. In the meantime, we'll go on to Lindsay.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi. Yeah, my name is Lindsay Wright. Thank you to the council members for allowing me to speak. I'm the CEO of Warm Water Wellness. We're a nonprofit on the peninsula that promotes aquatic therapy resources. My vice president, Mike Schrader, spoke at your last meeting, and I'm here tonight to give you another gentle nudge to please, we would really appreciate it if you would agendize a resolution at your next meeting. We have a considerable amount of support from the community, from the county. We have the County of San Mateo has passed a resolution, the Sequoia Healthcare District, Peninsula Healthcare District, the San Mateo Central Labor Council, and 16 out of 20 towns and cities in San Mateo have done so. And we are determined to get all 20 cities on board supporting our cause. This therapy pool, I was a patron of this pool, this vital community resource for over 20 years. And my partner has a spinal cord injury. Since the closure, I can't even express to you his decline. It's been life altering. He used to be able to take a scooter and independently go to this facility for his rehabilitation. He's now at the point where he needs full-time care, can't even feed himself, can't use the bathroom without assistance. For many individuals in the community, the lack of access to this resource and the callousness of Sutter. Sutter has just been incredibly obstinate, and we are just continuing to move forward to try to build as much support as possible. My partner was a marathon runner, and 6 months after his last marathon, he fell down 2 stairs and ended up with a spinal cord injury. And this can happen to anyone. Disability can be anyone's fate in an instant. And this facility was used by patrons throughout the county, not just San Mateo. People came from Oakland, Half Moon Bay, San Francisco, San Jose, and your city as well. So, and just a couple other little factoids. It was financed entirely by community donations, $4 million of community donations 25 years ago. Sutter has received nearly $1 billion in funding from the CARES Act for the purpose of keeping facilities open during COVID, yet they closed the Mickelson therapy pools. So anyway, we would greatly appreciate it if you could put this on your next agenda, and we've sent you a template, so feel free to reach out to us if you need us to send it to you again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next is Rita. Go ahead, Rita.
Okay, I just got my little notice to unmute,
Okay.
but thank you for taking my question. I'm not sure what Carolyn's issue was and not being able to communicate. Last week, my phone was out for 3 days after it rained and still having problems with my phone. There's lots of infrastructure issues that are happening in town that are not being addressed and not being worked on and not being coordinated by anyone in the town. And we all have to contact AT&T or PG&E or something separately, but there's several issues. And in bringing up this particular issue, I also want to talk about the minutes, the skeleton minutes, that really there are so many big issues that are happening in these particular meetings that when I looked at the minutes for, that are going to be approved or maybe not be approved for this particular meeting, these are real big issues that are being discussed. And it just gives the name, this person talked, that person talked. But I'd like to know what they said. And yeah, I can look at the video for it, but it would really help the residents, many residents, to see those comments, what they said, and why then people then voted a particular way to move these things forward in a document. We talked in one of the other meetings about, just having a history, an archival history. I think it was in Planning Commission, archival history about information and why things happened in this town. And really people rely on that information, but we won't have anything to archive based on these skeleton minutes. And I strongly encourage that the town moving forward, figure out a way to put it on the agenda to have that skeleton minutes reverse. So we have something to archive. So for the town council 10 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Jeremy, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I want to, if I could, through the chair, just address the comments that related to infrastructure. First, I think it's important to note that the town does not have control over certain infrastructure within the community, although we are a resource to those who may be having trouble connecting to those partners. So in the case of AT&T, we do have regular conversations with AT&T. I encourage anyone in the community who is having those kinds of issues to contact my office. You can speak to myself or Melvin, and we're happy to assist in any way. But just as a reminder, we do not have direct control over that infrastructure, but we're happy to connect people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next hand is Jim Beam. Go ahead, Jim.
I heard they are planning on building affordable.
Sounds like not a real person. Okay, let me see. Carolyn is still there, but not, she's lowered her hand, it looks like, but we can try going to her again. Yep, she raised her hand again. Let's try her again and see if her audio is working. Nope, it sounds like we still can't hear you, Carolyn. Try maybe leaving and rejoining the meeting. We'll move on in our agenda, but Carolyn, I'll give you an opportunity to talk again if you come back into the meeting, but it sounds like we can't hear you right now. Okay, I see no other hands raised, so we will move on to item 4. We are going to have our annual presentation from San Mateo County Libraries, and I see Garrett is with us tonight.
Yes,
Well,
good evening. Yeah, I'm here. Let me just share my screen with you. I'll just share my screen with you in just a second. Okay, good evening, Mayor Hughes and members of the Town Council. I'm Garrett Kuramoto, manager of the Portela Valley Library. You've each received a packet containing our newly published annual report for last fiscal year, which is full of wonderfully positive stories of impact, and I know you'll enjoy reading it. If you're not here in person, I'll make sure that there's copies at Town Hall for you. For members of the audience, if you'd like to view the annual report, you're welcome to. It's available on our library website at smcl.org/annual-report. Tonight, I'm pleased to present just a few brief highlights from our annual report for fiscal year 2021-2022. First established as a county-free library in 1912, the Library Joint Powers Authority was formed in 1999. Covering 351 square miles, our service area is comprised of our 11 member cities and the unincorporated areas of the county. San Mateo County Libraries is uniquely positioned to see the broader county service area while at the same time understanding each community that we serve. Approximately 283,000 people live in our service area, and 76% of them have a library card, which we're very proud of. The unique diversity and complexity of those we serve inspire and drive our services. Our communities this year faced another year of profound change. Through ongoing recovery efforts, San Mateo County Libraries has continued to adapt physical and virtual services to meet critical needs, and staff have never wavered in our commitment to provide equitable resources, programs, and services. Each of our 13 libraries is unique, but is also part of a larger family offering transformative experiences and one single mission: to strengthen our community by creating an inclusive sense of place and an environment for learning. San Mateo County Libraries continues to be a high-performing organization. Some standout benchmarks this year include a 96% favorability rating, 1.6 million website viewers, and 4 million wireless Wi-Fi sessions. The library system this year had over 2 million checkouts and 935,000 library visitors. Locally, Portola Valley Library had 50,710 library visitors and circulated 90,139 items last fiscal year. San Mateo County Libraries provides unmatched services to our communities, and we are consistently ranked as one of the best libraries in the nation. We started off 2022 with a new title, being named a 5-star library for the very first time by Library Journal magazine. We currently rank first in California and third in the nation when compared to our peer libraries. This incredible honor acknowledges our success and commitment to serving our patrons and the value our communities place on our library services. We also see how the Portola Valley community values its library every day and how enthusiastically visitors have returned, especially in regards to programs. Over this year, we steadily increased in-person offerings, such as our weekly family story times, which we plan to further increase this coming fiscal year. In addition to visits from the Beetle Lady, Marine Science Institute, Little Explorers Petting Zoo, and more, we're also grateful to have been able to utilize some of our beautiful outdoor spaces, particularly as a way to maximize distancing and facilitate the return of many favorite programs like the Bubblesmith, pictured here, and our weekly Tai Chi program for adults. Our staff's innovation and strong desire to serve the community led to the creation of new impactful library services this year. Each year, we make tremendous progress on our goals, and it's my pleasure to highlight some of our other system accomplishments. This year, we excitingly launched 7-day-a-week service and expanded evening hours at all of our libraries, including Portola Valley, allowing for greater access. We also provided vital support, including the distribution of free COVID-19 masks and test kits, and worked to address food insecurities in our communities. We successfully launched Empower Cards, which are new library cards designed to simplify and expand student access to library resources, with the goal being that every student in our county will have a library card. We've continued to strengthen partnerships with community groups and prioritize programming that reflects the diverse backgrounds, interests, and experiences of the people we serve. Our collections are always expanding, and this year the community gained access to valuable digital information and resources to help support those looking for employment, rent relief, mental health support, and much more. Our award-winning Big Lift Inspiring Summer Camp served over 900 youth at 8 school sites, making significant progress in advancing literacy and in academic performance in our most vulnerable communities. Parent feedback continues to be overwhelmingly positive. 93% of our parents reported that their child enjoyed the program, and 99% would recommend the program to other families. Continued Measure K funding supported these programs, which includes over 50,000 free giveaway books and the employment of 200 high school and college-age interns who gained valuable life experience and skills. In response to families craving more in-person offerings, our staff developed a new STEAM curriculum: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. This new program included fun, educational, hands-on activities for families to experience together. Through a new program with the state library, we rolled out free California State Parks passes inside our hiking backpacks. And we've expanded on the abundance of technology available to our communities. From 3D printers to virtual reality, coding workshops, camera kits, the options are endless for our users to create, innovate, and learn. Our latest initiative is creating new maker and digital spaces to offer more maker programs to the community. On Saturday, June 4th, after 3 years of construction, the beautiful new Atherton Library opened. The library's flexible and inviting space is a perfect location for community members to enjoy a variety of library programming and thoughtfully designed inviting spaces. I would love for you to come out and visit us. I know Marion will see you there on Monday. After being apart for so long, there is something so special about seeing our community members coming together to enjoy our indoor spaces. Here's a video of some patrons sharing what they enjoy most about our libraries.
Me gusta mucho el contenido, todo lo que hay en este lugar, en los libros, tenemos libros para leer.
I like coming here for the meditation, Friday, and they help me with my mental health.
Love the selection of books, especially my daughter's in a Spanish immersion program, so there's tons of Spanish books that
I'd like to thank my library staff for their tremendous work, creativity, the Friends of the Library for their dedication and advocacy, and city and town staff and council for your ongoing support. In particular, Town Manager Jeremy Dennis for his work on the Library JPA Operations Committee. And I want to give a really extra special thanks to Councilmember Derwin for her over 16 years of dedicated service representing Portola Valley on our JPA governing board. She's been a valued advocate and partner in so many ways, big and small, from setting and establishing policies and standards that have helped us develop the high quality and award-winning programs and services that we offer, to even individual things, volunteering to host public events, a variety of things. And in fact, her service has extended all the way to Monday. Just 2 days ago, Marianne was graciously hosted a author talk from a sociologist whose new book addresses food insecurities and issues around food and nutrition, and really the intersections of where health and economic inequalities and inequities exist in our communities. It was a really fascinating conversation, and we just appreciate your support so much. As your term comes to a close, we just really want to just say how much you'll be missed, and thank you again so much for all of your contributions and service. Thank you very much, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Garrett. Let me start with questions. Are there any council member questions?
One item just at the start, I was astonished by 76% of the area has a library card. That is incredibly high. Is it? I guess is my question. Is that, it seems so high to me.
It is, and again, so we're very proud to have reached that level. I think that it's a testament to how hard we've worked in our efforts to make accessing the library easy, and the process that we have to make getting a library card. In recent years, also we've made efforts to try to reduce those barriers, like eliminating fines for overdue items, which is something that has enabled us to bring people back in, people that maybe had inactive library cards and had feared coming back to the library because they knew they had these fines, and so we were able to just clear that away, and again just ease the access so that everyone in our community can access the resources that really this is all for. So yes, it is a high number, and we're really proud of that, but we want to do even more, and that's one reason why, for example, the Empower Card program is something that we're investing so heavily in, and the goal, of course, is to make sure that every single child in school in San Mateo County has a library card, and we're working with our partners through the various school districts to exchange that data so that we can issue a card automatically to every student.
Thank you.
Anyway. Oh, sorry. Yeah, to the mayor.
To the mayor,
Yes.
can I mention that you don't just offer books to check out? When I walked by the library on Sunday and you were open, there were bicycles to check out. There are sewing machines. What are some of the other things?
Bicycles, sewing machines, GoPro cameras. You can rent or you can reserve space on the 3D printers. We make accessible, actually through a really interesting local partnership with the Town Sustainability Committee. We have a demo backup power unit, which is available for loan and reserve on our website. We're also working towards adding an induction cooktop unit, which again are going to help the sustainability community reach its goals, and it's something that we're really excited to partner. So we're constantly dreaming up new ideas and just again trying to make anything possible depending on what community needs are.
Thanks.
Mayor? I could. ask a
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's fabulous what you guys have done, and love the fact that you've managed to extend hours. And I'm wondering what's the funding source that's made that possible?
As you know, library revenues are primarily funded through property taxes in the communities in which we serve, and so with increasing property taxes over time, which you can see a chart in the annual report, which will show you the sort of consistent level of increase. We've tracked our expenses in line with those revenues, and so with additional revenue, we realized that increasing access is really the most important thing, and increasing hours was something that has been long requested and something that we were able to do looking at what revenues we had available this year. So it was actually all just came out of our normal operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Mr. Mayor, before you turn to comments from the public, just to make an announcement, I believe we are being Zoom bombed tonight. So just if everyone can be patient with us as we work through that. I also see Caroline's raised her hand, and my suggestion, Mr. Mayor, is that we take her comments after this item's completed, unless she's commenting on the library report, of course.
Yeah, I'd rather go to her first and go to her phone, the phone
Thank
number
you.
of her. It looks like she has both her hands up. Go ahead, Carolyn, on the phone, if we can hear you there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very surprised that I could not communicate earlier. This is unacceptable. We're Portola Valley. We should have reliable internet, and we don't. So thank you, Rita, for addressing the concerns. In regards to the public library, we would like to see data. We contribute, and we love to contribute to other people's in privileges, to access our library. I had to access our library on a few occasions when we didn't have internet, even though I have solar power and I do have Tesla batteries. But for some reason, you know, there is no reliable internet in Portola Valley. So please address those issues. We love to help other people, but I think it's time that Portola Valley Council members address the issues that we have raised for over 5 years. You have so many issues that you have avoided deliberately, and so it is not acceptable. Yes, we love to help other people, but you first have to help this community, and it's time that you act. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I think that was a comment on the library. Did you have a comment on an item not on tonight's agenda also? Carolyn? She may be gone. Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Next is the account name test. We will see if that is our Zoom bomber again or a real person. Go ahead, test.
Housing is such a big issue. Why has
Not a real person. Okay, we will try Marissa Zuckerman.
Jeff Oxnell?
Also not a real person. We will try John Cirilli.
Is Windy Hill for sale?
Also not a real person. Okay. Dana Breen is probably a real person.
Dana's hand went down. I'm not sure if that was an error or.
Why don't you pull her over and see? Go ahead, Dana.
Okay, got it. I am so thrilled about this discussion with the library. And I also, like Sarah, was completely unaware that 76% of people have library cards. Anyway, I think it's amazing and I love it. And you can really feel that the library is becoming a more integral part of the town right now. And I love seeing all the activity down there, and I find it really thrilling. So thank you for all you library people.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, I see no more hands raised. So I'll bring it back to the council. Jeff, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Garrett for the report, and thanks to the library. I agree that it has long been a valuable resource of the community and seems to be becoming even more so. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
And I can't see council members at the dais, but Marianne, any comments? Actually, maybe I'll wrap up with Marianne because I'm sure she has a lot to say. John, anything?
Sure. I'll just thank you, Garrett. I'm just constantly amazed that the library seems to get better and better year by year. So that's really fabulous.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Sarah?
Just echoing all that's been said, it's clearly a treasure in the town, no matter what age you are. I remember even when I moved here like 16, 17 years ago, some of the first things that I did with my family was go to the library. So it's an awesome place and always has been. And obviously you guys are just continuing to evolve and expand everything about the services and offerings. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett, for all you and your team do at the library and everybody at SMCL. It is just a fabulous facility and a fabulous community resource. And with that, I will hand over to Marianne. Marianne.
I think that the library director and Marie Despain should be acknowledged. She has been at the forefront of all the changes at the library. Even during COVID, she kept it going. She had little kits people could pick up. She ended up having a lot of online activities. I did an art class. And she is fantastic at recruiting the very best staff, such as Garrett. The board right now is a really good board. Since I have been on for 16 years, I have seen a few boards. I have seen a few directors. The board and the director we have now are probably among the best I've ever seen. And of all my assignments, and you know I do a lot of county work, this is probably the one that's the closest to my heart. So thank you. It's been an honor to be on your board.
Thank you, Marianne, and thank you for spending so many hours on this amongst all the county things that you do. I think it's really returned enormously to the community in Portola Valley. Okay, thank you, Garrett, for being here tonight. I think that wraps up this item. And that brings us to our consent agenda. The consent agenda is acted on as one vote by the body unless a council member pulls an individual item to be considered separately. The public has an opportunity to speak to any item or all of the items on the consent agenda. And if you would like to do so, please raise your hand now. And we will start with Ryan Coe, which may be a bot or not. We will see, depending on the hand raising behavior is a little suspicious. Go ahead, Ryan.
I heard that.
Yep. Okay, next is Rita.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. I, of course, would suggest that the minutes be pulled from the consent agenda and redone to thoroughly reflect the comments from the residents, and so that the residents can see the comments from the council and the work that had been done rather than watching the complete video. But to have the minutes actually reflect the meeting and the big things that had been approved that the residents would have to move forward with. And I believe there is also an item on those minutes waiving a first reading or a second reading on a particular item. And it looks like the attendance for that particular meeting was very low. And if it was written out, what the different council members said, it would actually help the residents because we are the ones that are going to have to live with the ramifications of the things that were passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Jeremy, remind me, I believe that as well as the video, we also have the transcript of the audio recording as well, right? So there's a searchable text transcript of.
We'll make those available as requested. And then we also produce a summary of each meeting as well, which is, it's similar to the action minutes. Certainly, it doesn't contain all the detail.
Thank you. Next is Carolyn. Go ahead, Carolyn. You're on mute.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have some comments around the warrant list, and I'm surprised that this is the warrant list for November 9th through November 9th. But we're addressing minutes of October. I have several questions about the warrant list, and I hope that the town manager can give us an explanation before you approve this consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. The warrant list is always forward-looking, so the dates between the minutes, which are from our previous meeting, and the warrant list will always be different from each other. So that's the explanation for that. Okay, I see two more hands raised that I don't recognize, so they may be bots again. Susan Kaufman, they may be real, and I apologize if you are real and I'm doubting you. Susan, go ahead.
Hello.
Nope. Okay, Mark Watts.
Caroline said the.
Okay, I see no more hands raised. So, would any council member like to pull an item from consent? Nope. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
John, seconded by Marianne. Could you call the roll, please, Melissa?
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Derwin,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wernicott,
Aye.
Mayor Hughes.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And that brings us to our study session. Item 6, receiving an update from our town lobbyist, year in review, 2023 discussion, and an update on everything that's about to happen on January 1st. What laws are about to come into effect. And we have Audrey here tonight. Jeremy, do you have an introduction beyond welcoming Audrey?
Welcome, Audrey. Floor is yours.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Audrey.
Anything? Okay, you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So good to be here with you guys again. I know it's been a little while. I'm here to present on all the legislative and budget issues from the year that are of importance to the town. But before jumping into the specific bills of interest, I wanted to provide a quick high-level overview because there was a lot of big, larger policy issues that were advanced by the legislature this year that I think are important. And then I had a few notes just on last night's election. You've probably seen all the results and everything coming in today, but not much new on the election results that were of super surprise. All of the statewide races, like governor, lieutenant governor, AG, all of those remained with a Democratic incumbent. So that was as expected. In terms of the Democrat versus Republican numbers in the state legislature, not every race has been decided. There's like 4 that are still too close, but the numbers remain relatively the same as they were before the election. So the Senate has 31 Democrats and 9 Republicans. There is a possibility the Republicans could pick up 1 seat in Senate District 38, but it's too close. It's like less than 1,000 votes. So that will remain to be seen. But either way, the Senate will retain its supermajority. And then in the Assembly, the outcome is very similar. 4 races out of the 80 are still too close to call, but the Assembly is divided with 61 Democrats and 19 Republicans, which is essentially the status quo from before. So, and for the town, we still have Berman and Becker will remain. Berman's district technically moves from District 24 to 23 based on the redistricting numbers when you look up, because that's been confusing this year too. So just flagging that. And then some of the larger issues that were dealt with at the legislature by the end of session was the governor had put forward his taxpayer relief package, which was $9.5 billion in direct refunds for income tax filers. Which was kind of in lieu of the gas tax, giving money back for the increase in gas taxes. And there was a lot of discrepancy about that. And some folks thought it wasn't enough. And so that was highly debated. There was a big infrastructure package this year of $47 billion for transportation, affordable housing, broadband, and $150 million for libraries. So hopefully that will help bolster our libraries even more, even though after the great presentation, sounds like it's already going well. And then for transportation, the budget had 4 years, over 4 years, it'd be $10.8 billion in transportation funding. Most of it's for transit, freight, active transportation, not a lot for local streets and roads, but mostly like active transportation and bike and ped. And then the climate and drought. So 2 weeks before the end of session, Governor Newsom introduced 5 climate proposals that he wanted the legislature to champion. And so 4 of the 5 passed. I'll mention them just briefly, but one was codifying the statewide carbon neutrality goal to help reduce climate pollution by 2045. That ended up passing. The only one that failed was the second one, which was adopting a more aggressive greenhouse gas goal. So it would have to go from 40% to 55% by below the 1990 level. A lot of the moderate Democrats felt like it would be more useful to provide more resources to help meet that goal instead of just making the goal a little bit further. So the Mod Dems blocked that one, and that's the only one that didn't pass. They also established a setback for any new oil well of 3,200 feet by any homes, schools, or parks. Interestingly, the oil industry has already filed a referendum for that one that will be potentially on the 2024 ballot. So one to watch there. And then creating clean electricity targets. And then lastly, requiring the state to develop an achievable carbon removal target. So the 4 of the 5 passed, and that was all coupled with the $19.8 billion climate funding package that had lots of funding for water, drought, wildfire, extreme heat, sea level rise, and energy. We provided Jeremy with a funding breakdown for what we've flagged out of the $19 billion, the different pots of what it will go towards. And then hopefully the town will be eligible for some grants under that as the state funding becomes available over the next few months. I suspect it will take the state quite a while to get all of the grant funding out because a lot of those are going into new programs that haven't even been set up yet. So the state agencies have to get all of that going. So we'll continue to keep that spreadsheet updated and flag for the town of the most important items that we could potentially get funding from. There was COVID paid sick leave extension. So at the end of session in a budget trailer bill, they extended the COVID paid sick leave requirements. It was set to expire on September 30th, but it got extended through the end of the year. But just of note, I'm sure you've heard, especially given the item that you had on the consent calendar on AB 361, but the governor also did declare an end of the COVID emergency February 28th of next year. So with that, that just goes into the Brown Act legislation of importance. With the end of the emergency coming, Brown Act bodies will have to revert back to in-person soon. There were a number of proposals this year to try to make changes to like remote participation look like. Only 2 of them passed. One was a Cortese bill, SB 1100, and it allows the presiding member of the body to remove an individual for disrupting the meeting. That was sponsored by CSAC, the league, and others. And then the other one that was signed was AB 2449, and it does allow local governments to utilize some teleconferencing, but it's a very, very narrow exception. It's not like on a regular basis. It's if a certain, council member has a medical emergency or something like that, that has to be approved by the board and everything, then it would allow remote participation. So that is one option potentially after the COVID emergency ends in February, but I feel like from everyone I've talked to, it sounds like it's not like something that will be utilized often given all the criteria that need to be met in order to make that happen. I will flag the governor also declared a state of emergency in response to the monkeypox outbreak and then dedicated $41.5 million to the Department of Public Health for the response there. And then I wanted to flag the care court proposal. I'm sure you heard about that too, but the governor announced his proposal to create a state care court program, which is to deliver mental health and substance use disorder services. The counties are the ones that are implementing this, and they fought to make sure there was enough funding. There's 2 cohorts. So the first cohort is 7 counties that have to implement it by 2023. Just FYI, San Mateo's in the second cohort. So that will be implemented by December 1st, 2024. So there's that. And then I wanted to flag AB 988, the crisis line. So that is now set up. So it establishes alternatives to 911. So if there's a mental health crisis, rather than calling police officers, they're creating the statewide 988 line that will connect people with a mental health crisis professional. And then I'll talk more about the housing legislation in just a second when we talk about the bills that are of specific interest to the town. But the 2 most high profile ones this year that I'm sure you saw a lot about was AB 2011 and SB 6. They were the 2 most high profile this year because one of them was a held over from last year that didn't end up getting passed, but they struck a deal with labor at the end of session to add skilled and trained and all of that. And so it ended up passing. AB 2011, it makes affordable housing and mixed use housing basically by right on commercial lands if they meet certain affordability and labor requirements. And then SB 6 is similar. Basically, they do overlap, so a developer can kind of choose which one they want to use depending on the scenario. SB 6 isn't a CEQA exemption, but it allows for a rezone of retail and office space, like without having to go through the rezoning process if they want to use it for residential development. So those were 2 of the biggest. Some of the feedback in the chatter around the Capitol that I've heard is just that given all the different provisions and requirements that are in there, it doesn't seem like it's something that's going to be used all the time because there's like with all of the labor requirements and all of that, it's not like something that developers are going to do every day. But I did want to flag those because they've been pretty high profile. I'll mention that bail reform was the 2-year bill that came back this year by Senator Hertzberg, but it didn't end up passing at the end of session. And then the last one before going to specific bills was AB 1951. It was a sales tax exemption for manufacturing and research, which I think everybody thinks is a very laudable goal. And it was, but this bill ended up expanding it to apply to local governments, and it didn't include a backfill for what the revenue loss would be. So for cities and counties in the town, it was like ended up being millions of dollars over 5 years for this tax exemption without having a backfill from the state. But the governor ended up vetoing the measure in the end. So we won't end up seeing that revenue loss there. And then in terms of specific bills, I already mentioned AB 2011 and SB 6, but I wanted to flag a few of the other high profile kind of housing and planning bills. AB, and again, I know the numbers can kind of just go in and out, but I just wanted to flag a few as we talk about the discussion for next year, because I think a lot of these will be things that we see coming back, because housing homelessness will continue to be at the forefront of what the legislature wants to address next year. But AB 1445, it requires fire, sea level rise, and evacuation risks to be considered when determining a city or the town's RHNA goals. So that's one. Robert Rivas had a bill to require cities to include their progress towards meeting their RHNA goals for extremely low income households in their progress report to HCD. So there's a lot on additional reporting requirements. I think that always is the default. The bill starts out more aggressive and then just ends up at that if they can't quite get everything they want. Bloom had a bill, adds specificity about where emergency shelters can be zoned in a city's housing element. And then it would require the town to carry over any undeveloped units from the previous RHNA cycle into the new housing element cycle. So if they weren't met, it has to count towards the next one too. Wykowski had his usual ADU bills to increase the height and the setback. And Bloom had his usual, they both tend to have a lot of ADU bills every year. Bloom had a bill that provides density bonuses for co-housing that has shared kitchens. So basically to incentivize development of a shared housing development if it has a bathroom, sink, refrigerator type of thing. Friedman had a bill to prohibit public agents from imposing minimum parking requirements on developments if it's close to transit. I won't mention all these because there's so many different housing bills from this year, but Solace had a bill that prohibits a city and county from adopting an ordinance requiring public hearings when it's just increasing the bedroom count within an existing dwelling unit. So a lot in the planning space, as you'll see, they're just trying to add any more units anywhere they can and trying to make the process at least a little bit less burdensome. But I know that that also comes with local governments getting less of a say and trying, to develop plans doesn't always align there. So that's one of the biggest. Wix had a bill that allows housing development projects in 17 counties, which includes San Mateo, to receive added height and unlimited density if the project's in a certain low vehicle travel area. They're trying to get more housing in like rural areas there. And then Robert Rivas had faster approval of building permits. You have to approve the permits in a certain amount of time kind of thing. And then one of the other ones I just wanted to mention, I thought was really interesting, but the governor vetoed a Friedman bill. She's the chair of the Transportation Committee, and she had a bill to say that the CAPTI, which is the Climate Action Plan, that those goals would have to be considered when giving out SB1 funds. So a lot of like CSAC and the league were worried about this one because SB1 a lot of it was supposed to be used for streets and roads. But then if you codify this like CAPTI guidelines and the focus is a lot on climate, it's going to move towards like active transportation when potentially that wasn't the goal of the original bill. So the governor actually ended up vetoing it, which I thought was really interesting. And then the last one I'll mention was Senator Umberg had a bill on elections. It's a little complicated of how it works, but basically if there's an issue from like a developer or any sort of like permit or anything that's before a city, a board of supervisors, or a town, within 12 months, you can't have taken $250 from the individual or they have to recuse themselves. So that was an Umberg bill that passed. And then looking ahead to 2023, I won't go into like tons of detail. We don't know exactly what bills will be. There's a huge shakeup in the legislature. It's like the first time in many, many years that we're seeing over like 34 new legislators. So we don't know exactly what everyone's priorities will be. They've been really focused on getting through yesterday and what that will look like. They come back for their convening session on December 5th, where they're able to introduce bills. And then they come back like actually to do their work in January. So they will be back one day where they all get sworn in December and they can introduce their first slate of bills. But with 30 new legislators coming in, there's going to be, a bunch of new committee chair positions. Committee members will move all around. So we don't know exactly what everyone will focus on. I just know that housing, homelessness, and behavioral health issues will be at the forefront because that has been the biggest focus of everyone and continues to be from the governor. You probably saw his latest announcement about withholding the homelessness funding from local governments until they submit action plans to the state because he thinks but locals are not meeting their goals and that we should have got farther at addressing homelessness with how much money's been put out there. So that will be important. And then, I think that's about it. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and look forward to hearing from you about priorities you have for 2023 and things that I should continue to look out for.
Okay, thanks. Any council questions? Jeff?
Yeah, I had one quick question. AB 1445, which now requires the sea level and fire safety evaluations and allocations. Does it codify that in any more detail, or does it just say take fire safety? I mean, does it give any? Are there actual details within it at this point, or is it just saying take those things into account?
Yeah, I will send you the bill, but a lot of it has been just that. It starts in 2025. So it has a little bit of time to ramp up, but it basically just says requires a council of governments to consider specific factors in developing it. So there's not a ton, but I'll send Jeremy the bill and he can flag it for you. But
and it's, obviously it applies to the next housing cycle, not this current one. So yeah. Okay, that was one question I had. Thanks.
Sarah?
I had a question about that. So thanks, Jeff, but also on the end of the changes to the COVID policies, I'm curious, Cara, maybe how you see that affecting how we're running our meetings, our committee meetings, our commissions.
Sure. So we are still entitled to use AB 361 until the governor's emergency order is rescinded. And as Audrey said, that doesn't happen until February 28th of next year. So provided we can continue to make findings that there is a need to have remote meetings because of the pandemic, we can still proceed under AB 361. The new legislation that was introduced that Audrey mentioned does allow some additional remote meetings, and that will kick in after AB 361 expires. But everyone who has reviewed the bill believes that the findings are very onerous and the procedure for tracking it is very onerous. And so we are not really encouraging the use of that, particularly for committees. It requires things like you need advance approval of the legislative body before participating remotely. There are very prescribed definitions of what allows the grounds for meeting remotely. And then there's a limitation on how many times an individual committee member or council member may use the remote meeting. You can use it no more than 3 consecutive months or 20% of the meetings. So there's a lot of tracking involved. So, we really are not putting a lot of stake in that new legislation. If there is a need for remote meeting, we still have the pre-pandemic rules available, and that's what we would fall back on. The only downside with that is that the committee member or council member participating remotely needs to make their remote location accessible to the public, and that can be challenging, especially if you're participating from home, and some homes do not have ADA accessibility in Portola Valley. So that's that's where we are in terms of the remote meetings.
So just to ask a follow-up then, essentially by February, well, would that be March 1 then? That we would go back to all committee, commission and council meetings in person? And then the public could still observe via Zoom, or if they wanted to participate, they had to be here in person? How does that part work?
Right. So February 28th or, starting March 1 is the outside limit of our ability to use AB 361. It might be that we would resume remote meetings earlier. And you're correct that the remote portion of the legislation really just applies to the council members. So they need to be in person. The council can always choose to give multiple platforms to community members to participate. So you can continue to offer the remote option to community members. But it will not be.
Just to add, I think we might potentially see a bill or so next year on the topic, but I don't know how much further it will get than the Rubio bill, just given that how much was negotiated with that. The other bill got watered down basically to the point of not being usable. So Assemblymember Lee just dropped his bill because he's like, we can't even use this. And I think that's how folks are starting to fill out the Rubio one. So again, if a bill, we might see a couple introduced at the beginning of session, which we'll of course track, but I think we'll follow the same line of politics, just given the opposition and where the chairs were in the local government committee, that the pushback, I don't think will get too much further. So
I agree with that.
And so this would
and
apply
especially with the Rubio bill already being signed, I feel like folks feel like that was kind of the option. And now we have something, so it's weird to do something more expansive after that. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to you off.
No problem. So this would apply to the council, but also to the commissions and the committees?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Okay, any more questions? I can't see the other end, Marianne and John.
Nothing for me.
Nope. Nope, I see Marianne shaking her head. Okay, I will go to public comment then, and I see Carolyn's hand is up.
Thank you very much. Audrey, you gave a wonderful presentation. Unfortunately, you're young, and I was hoping that you give more specifics relating to Portola Valley. We have asked town council to really address issues concerning our residents, and unfortunately, they have failed to address these concerns. And there's many issues that are prevailing. Now, we have seen November 9th, ACD has come back with a letter sent to the town. It was the Laura Russell. It's the Department of anyway, over the last 2 years, we have told town council that we don't agree with paid staff because every document they have submitted to our government officials were inaccurate, were outdated, and did not present the data for Portola Valley. It is unexcusable. They might have won, the new election, but it's time that there's accountability because we know what they have promised. We know how much taxes we have paid to address these issues, and nothing has been resolved. So Audrey, yes, you gave a wonderful presentation, but it is not fair that you are not presenting the data before this presentation. You have spoken more than 3 minutes. It would be more equitable and fair if you would have presented the data that really reflects Portola Valley and the issues that we are raising. Thank you very much. I'm very disappointed with town council. I'm very disappointed with town staff. And I think it's time that we address accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we may be back to the bots. We will try Lauren.
I just want.
Next, we have Joe.
Never mind. I was too scared to ask. I'm sorry.
Okay. And I see no more hands raised. So thank you very much, Audrey. Nice update as usual. A lot of stuff happened this year. A little bit less expansive maybe than last year, but still a lot that we've got to consider as we head towards the new year.
And one, like probably the biggest thing I forgot to say, but is the budget. LAO and Department of Finance have put out multiple reports saying that budget revenues are supposed to be way less than expected. So next year, that's going to be their big thing, is our programs getting cut that were previously funded in last year's budget, or just in terms of like member requests and district asks that we have. I think that they'll obviously still have those. They always do, but it won't be as expansive as last year with the $90 billion surplus. So just something to keep in mind. But thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Audrey.
Through the chair, there's a hand did get raised.
Oh, yes, I see. David. A real human, we hope. Go ahead, David. We can't hear you, David. You're not muted, but we can't hear you. Nope, still can't hear you. I think we may have had this problem a couple of weeks ago too. Okay, David, we will move on, and I will take your hand again if you want to try fixing your issue and coming back. I will take you after our next item. Okay, thanks, Audrey. That brings us then to item 7. Receive and discuss quarterly council priorities report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight's report is going to be made by Assistant
Jeremy. Sorry, I see David is back and has raised his hand. So before
sorry about that.
We try him again. He's gone again. Okay, never mind. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Tonight's report will be presented by the Assistant Town Manager, Melvin Gaines. Melvin, all yours.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Hughes and members of the Town Council. My name is Melvin Gaines, for anyone who doesn't know me, and I am an Assistant Town Manager. And I'm here tonight to discuss the first quarter's progress on fiscal year 22-23 council priorities. So just to go over, this is the first quarter update on the council priorities, and it covers July 1 through September 30 of this year. And I've actually kind of expanded upon that a little bit to discuss some of the progress that we've made on projects in the last month or so. So the numbers you saw in your report they've been updated slightly, and I'll talk about that a little later. But the intention of today is to answer any questions the council may have about projects and receive any council direction that you may have again, but this is only, 3 months, 1 quarter into the work plan. So on March 23rd of this year, the Town Council adopted 5 priorities, as you can see on the screen. Those priorities are wildfire and emergency preparedness, diversity, equity, and inclusion, land use projects and programs, sustainability, and operational and service delivery enhancements. So in addition to the 5 priorities, the council approved 29 priority efforts. Sometimes I'll refer to that as projects or actions or programs, but they all support the 5 council priorities. And later in July, via a consent calendar item, you added 5 additional projects to the work plan. So now there are a total of 35 priority projects. When discussing council priorities, I think it's always important to bring up this iceberg. I caution you to remember the iceberg when we're discussing this. Priority efforts are those items that kind of stand above the iceberg, at the tip of the iceberg, and the things that are above the water level. But the town does a lot more than what we show on these priorities. For example, there are no priorities to do payroll. There are no priorities to resurface the roads. But these are all things that we do on a day-to-day basis and actually make up the majority of the work that we do. But the strategic priorities are those items that the council has identified as important. And from a staff perspective and town manager and speaking with the mayor and vice mayor, really want to take the opportunity to provide progress updates on the matters that are important to you all. So this is that, the strategic priorities are those things that are above the water line. So as far as the progress goes thus far, we have 34 total projects. Of those 34 projects, as of today, 3 are completed. 27 projects are in progress and 4 have not begun. The other numbers that you see, 1 for project completed, 29 for projects in progress, are the actual progress that we made as of September 30th. But in the last month, we've actually completed 2 additional projects. So I wanted to highlight that here. On the operational and service delivery enhancement priority, the town has made significant progress on 4 projects. The project to identify and transition to a new IT managed services provider has been completed. We issued an RFP actually last fiscal year and awarded a vendor named Stepford Inc. and onboarded them in July. So they've been providing IT managed services to the town since July 1 of this year. The town modified its newsletter to support the town public engagement efforts and enhancement efforts. And in addition to modifying the newsletter and kind of giving it a facelift, the town continues to examine ways to improve communications, and it's an ongoing process. So that project isn't complete, but we definitely wanted to highlight that the newsletter has been greatly enhanced. Regarding recruiting, hiring, and onboarding staff, the planning and building department has hired a development review technician, which is one of the new positions that council authorized us to add to our FTE numbers this year. And we have active recruitments for positions in public works and the finance division. In an effort to improve our efficiency and effectiveness through enhanced technology use, we have been piloting the use of a project management software. I've actually used it to manage the updates that we receive for these council priorities. And we're constantly looking at new technology, as well as for the emergency operations using VOC. It's been launched and we're using VOC for emergency operations, as well as to track some employee onboarding stuff. Within the wildfire and emergency preparedness council priority, the town has made significant progress on 4 projects. The home hardening and defensible space code updates are adopted. We did the first reading on October 12th, and the second reading was October 26th. The draft safety element, as you all are aware, was released on October 10th. Council accepted the evacuation study on July 13th. And staff and committee members are actively working on implementation of the evacuation study, figuring out how to implement it and actually beginning the steps. The town manager and I actually met with members of the EPC earlier today to discuss implementation of the evacuation study. And as mentioned earlier, the VOC Emergency Operations Center tool has been launched and is being used by staff. Under the land use programs, projects and programs priority, there's only one significant accomplishment on this list. However, it's very significant. Over, for the past year plus, the town has been engaged in this housing element update and had multiple meetings, whether that be with the ad hoc housing element committee or the planning commission, the town council, or just general public meetings. We've taken on this tremendous effort to update the housing element under the guidance of the town council and the leadership of staff and committee members. Shout out to Laura Russell, the building and planning director. But we've submitted that housing element update to HCD in August and actually have received comments from them. I believe received comments today, and have a meeting scheduled with the ad hoc housing element committee tomorrow to discuss the comments that we received. And under the sustainability priority, we have adopted the green building ordinance. So the first reading was on October 12th, and the second reading was October 26th. There are 4 projects of the 34 projects that have not begun yet. The project under wildfire and emergency preparedness, there are 2 projects. One is to further explore the undergrounding of town utilities. We anticipate that we'll begin that project in April of 2023. And the other project is to review Woodside Fire Protection District's updated fire maps. And we will review those and update plans as necessary when those maps become available. We expect that'll be this calendar year. Under operational and service delivery enhancements, there are also 2 projects that we have not begun. One is to explore and better serve and utilize town committees. We intend to begin that effort in January. And there's also a project to develop an in lieu fund policy, which has not begun due to the volume of work that the planning and building department is currently undertaking. They do believe they'll be able to get to this project beginning in March of 2023.
Melvin, if I can interrupt for just a quick moment here, if you could stay on the slide, just because things are new and this was really intended to be a presentation based on the end of September. One improvement related to the committee communications and their operations that I'm actively exploring with committee chairs right now is having them more engaged with their own email systems. Right now, the emails that come to town hall. And we've been talking to the chairs about a process by which the chairs have direct access to that email system and are able to engage with people a little more directly, a little more quickly than we've been able to do in the past. Small thing, but this is important for certainly for some residents who wish to have that broader engagement. Thank you, Melvin.
So again, this is the first quarter update, but I do want to remind you all of the process that you approved via consent calendar on July 13th. And the next update will actually be in January. January, and that'll be the Q2 mid-year report. So that will cover July 1 through December of 2022. I'll be back in front of you providing a report and presentation, potentially asking to modify some projects depending on where we are, whether or not we are able to make the progress that we like, or maybe it'll be a similar report to today, just giving you an update with no proposed modifications. In April of 2023, we'll provide a Q3 report, again, in coming to council and providing a public presentation. And in July 2023, to close out this work plan, we'll just provide an informational update. So the purpose of this item was just to provide an update, as well as to provide the opportunity for the council and the public to ask any questions they might have about specific projects, as well as to receive any direction. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and wait for the mayor to decide how you'd like to lead things. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, as we're transitioning to questions from the council, this is the first time we have done this. And we do consider this a work in progress, and we're very eager to hear from the collective council tonight on ways to improve the product, bring you the information that you're seeking on behalf of the residents that you serve. So we are, as they say, all ears. Melvin, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Melvin. I think that was a great presentation. So are there any council questions either about individual items or about the structure of the report and things that you're interested in? And I can't see the dais again, so speak up if you have any questions.
I spent quite a bit of time with Melvin and Jeremy separately, so I have a handful of comments, but I don't have any questions.
Okay. John or Marianne? No?
Nothing for me.
No questions. I asked a few questions of Jeremy before the meeting, so
Okay.
I'm good.
Jeff?
No questions for me either.
Okay. Melvin, I had one, and this is, I guess, for both you and Jeremy. How have you been finding using the project management tool in terms of how helpful it's been for you, not just in terms of your ability to produce reports for us, but just in terms of kind of day-to-day management and staying on top of things and knowing what's going on, knowing where things are slipping or working well and that kind of stuff?
So I've been using it with my team, my small team of the assistant to the town manager and the I don't even know her title. It's a shame. And Taylor. But it's been super helpful for my management of their work products and communicating with them. But really the pilot of it has been managing this council priority process. And it's been very helpful because we're able to communicate and have everything in a like one place. So yes, it's been productive. My hope is to have town staff, once they become very familiar with it, potentially use it to manage different projects similar to what I'm using with my team. But so far so good. I don't want to push it on people too much too soon. So we started with managing council priorities and kind of teasing them into managing other projects with it as well.
Yeah, to add on to that, we haven't introduced it formally to the the line staff to use for their purposes, and it may not be the exact tool for what they need. We're just about to start using it in finance for some discrete projects. So Melvin and Cindy Rodas, the finance director, have had at least one meeting. I haven't started using it at the management level yet. So like between projects that I'm working on with Melvin or others, that's gonna start in the next month or so. We're just on some very specific things that we're working on. I would expect that the last department to really start to utilize it is probably planning and building at this point. We're working, as you know, on a separate permit tracking software, and that's important for the line staff. And we just brought, just in the last couple of days, our senior planner, Adrian Smith, came back. She hasn't seen this yet, so I'm sure she'll be utilizing it in some fashion. I'll just speak for myself. I found as somebody who's not sophisticated when it comes to software, I find it to be, Asana is a great tool. And it was very easy to support Melvin in what he was looking for as it related to the council priorities. And what the way that I intend to use it, at least in this project, is to just continuously be updating in there. So Melvin at any point can go in and run the report that he needs. So I think that that's how we're going to get people more comfortable with it, is probably through that process first.
Great. Sounds successful, and like you guys are finding benefit from it, not just for helping inform us, but for your own work too, which is great.
Well, and the special thanks to the mayor and the vice mayor who have been working with Melvin and I over the past period of time to get to this place. And we really appreciate it because it clearly is a useful piece of what we do.
Thanks. Okay, if there are no more council questions, I will go to public comment. Oh, I see Dave Cardinal is back. Let's start with David.
Hi, is it working better this time?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I shot one of the computers. It wasn't behaving. So on this topic, I think it's great. I think there are apparently many people who wake up in the morning believing that the entire town staff is just sitting at their phones eagerly and waiting to take their next issue from whoever calls, and don't have an understanding of where all the money, if you will, the time goes. So breaking that out and saying, you know, here's what we're spending it on, and if we don't want to spend it on that, then that's a thing. But it's not like people are just wandering around. It's all dedicated to projects, and they have timelines. So I think it's great. I mean, I use a lot of these tools in my everyday job. So, and to backtrack to the last comment about Audrey and the lobbyist report, you know, I spent, I don't know how much time wading through the bills simply to housing that affected us. And there were, I think, 20 that were passed this session that all impact the RENA and us in that one little area. And each one takes like an hour or more to read. So God bless. I think any funnel we can get where somebody can give us an educated opinion of which ones really matter and how they matter is money well spent. Because otherwise, I don't see any way that any of us can keep up with the flow. Now, you can argue Sacramento should be passing all these bills, and I think that's a good argument, but they are, and as long as they are and all that, we need to deal with them. So thumbs up. I thought that was great. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Whoops, my panelist window has moved off my screen for some reason. Next is Carolyn.
Good evening. Thank you, town council members. Thank you, Assistant to the Manager, Melvin Gaines. Unfortunately, you're new to this town, and it seems like you are being misguided. I hope that you will connect with the residents, because your presentation is incomplete. We have addressed issues for more than 5 years that have not been completed because priority was on housing. Whereas our general plan had different issues like evacuation, public safety, and unfortunately many projects were approved by the Planning Commission, no, not the Planning Commission, the Planning Department on discretionary authority. And they actually did not consult the general plan, which is very complex. Mr. Gaines, I welcome you to this town, and I hope you will actually address the many issues that we're facing. Because I just read, you know, the HCD letter that was submitted to the town, to the planning department. And well, they failed to protect us because they submitted documents that did not have the accurate documentation. They did not have the accurate data regarding Portola Valley, and now we're in a big mess. But we were in a big mess before. And so I hope you will reach out. I also hope that Vice President Sarah Wernicke will reach out to her residents, because we're in her district. Obviously, you don't know what has been going on for the last few years. And to give praise to what is going on is not acceptable. You have built your ADU. We have waited to build our ADU because we wanted to have it counted into the new cycle. So many others on committee members, on committees in Portola Valley have ignored the urgency or the compliance with the RENA numbers, and they went ahead just to serve their own purposes. This is not how Portola Valley serves. We are a community that is based on integrity, on values, and we support each other. we do not support individual purpose. So,
Carolyn, you're at 3 minutes.
okay, well, but that's it. But, you know, you cannot, this is unacceptable what you're doing tonight. And I hope that the assistant mayor or the assistant to the town, whatever his title is, Mr. Dennis, will reach out to the residents, because a lot of problems have been ignored over the last
Thank you,
5
Carolyn.
years.
You're a minute over now.
Okay, well, fine. I hope I expressed my issues.
Thank you.
Unacceptable.
Thank you. Okay, I see no more hands. Oh, Betsy's hand went up, but Jeremy, your hand is up first, so go ahead.
I'm sorry, was that to me?
To you, Jeremy, yes.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just make 2 very brief comments. The first is that I hope folks who are interested in the letter that the town received today from HCD attend tomorrow's Housing Element Committee, where it will be discussed in depth. But I'm sorry to say that some of what you heard tonight was inaccurate related to the content of the letter. I would also state that you know, our staff is always available to meet with any resident on any issue. Howard Young, the Public Works Director, and I had the pleasure of meeting with Ms. Vertonghen a few weeks ago on some of her issues. And we extend that to anyone who wishes to meet with us, and we're happy to help. Thanks.
Thank you. I would also point out that council members are not elected by district in Portola Valley. We're townwide, so all 5 council members are everybody's council member. And I see Betsy's hand is up, so we'll go to Betsy next.
Thank you, Mayor Hughes, and thank you, Melvin Gaines. Betsy Morgan Thaler, very appreciative of this first run through of council priorities and how we're accountable to them. I am going to reference Dave Cardinal's comments because I am aligned with him as to not wanting to spend staff time needlessly. I value your time, and it's clear you've got a lot on your hands right now. And in that sense, when I heard Rita's comments earlier tonight about the minutes, and then Jeremy's response that he would make audio transcripts available on request, I thought that there might be a more efficient way to address that. I wanted to note that I have lived in the town long enough to remember fondly ready access to minutes. I made ample use of them, and I was able to avoid bothering the staff incredibly much. And so I think that you get the better deal here from the volunteer community, whether we serve on committees or whether we're trying to support committees in the arduous heavy lifting that we're all doing right now with adequate minutes. And so I suppose that if I had a question and were to phrase this in a question form, when you look at the operational service enhancements, and particularly your targeting public engagement enhancements, how is it that you choose to initiate a new newsletter, which is one-way directional communication, rather than perhaps incorporate requests that you're hearing relatively regularly about access to transcripts and minutes? That is a question. And thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Betsy. Okay, we've discussed, I think, minutes at several meetings previously and gone in detail on why we've moved to the action minutes. A lot of it is staff time savings, and with the availability of the transcripts, I think that satisfied the need for both the detail and the summary action minutes. Okay, I see no more hands raised, so thank you. Actually, I'll bring it back to council for any comments as opposed to questions. Comments, thoughts, future direction for Melvin and doing these reports. I think the expectation is we'll be doing these quarterly or approximately quarterly. Is that right, Melvin, going forward?
Yes, that is correct.
Any thoughts or comments from council members?
I'll make a quick comment regarding just the format and the use of the priorities, new for priorities format. I wish everyone could see our first pass at it. What was it, 10 years ago. We really had a hard time figuring out what was an action, what was a project, and what was a priority. And we finally got to a point where it sort of worked. But this is really a huge improvement, and I think it makes it really a striking difference, and it's a huge improvement in the refinement that's much more useful in figuring out where the town is going and what is being planned. We'll have a lot of questions about the individual actions that we've got listed out, but those won't be answered until the projects are a little further along. So I'm absolutely delighted with the way it's gone. Thank you, Melvin.
Thanks, John. Jeff.
Yeah, I agree. This is a great dashboard for seeing everything that we've been talking about, and just trying to actually just kind of wrap your head around everything that's going on and what's happening and what isn't happening and when. So thank you. This is a great effort, and I don't have a lot of questions right now, but like John, we will obviously be discussing it more as we go forward.
Okay, thanks. Sarah.
I agree. I think, as Dave Cardinal said, I think there's a lot of great things about this, but one of the benefits is it also kind of daylights the amount of work going on in the team and our very tiny team, and more about that later. Like I said, I did have a lot of discussion in the details with both Jeremy and Melvin separately. My high level comment is number one, well, so many of my comments will be around operations, shocker. But I think that one of the things that is most improved in this is related to 3F, which is basically project management. And this document and this process in and of itself is a massive leap forward relative to even when I started, almost 2 years ago. So Melvin, I just want to do a special thanks to you for bringing this process to the organization, because I think it's incredibly helpful, for the public to see all the work that's going on, for us to understand where we are in terms of various projects and whatnot. So thank you. I want to give you a couple little nits that I thought of since we've met, and that are a little bit further on refinement for format. The first is, when we look at fire, for instance, there's 12 different items within that section, fire and emergency preparedness. A lot of it, as I was trying to synthesize it down, has to do with CPAW and Woodside Fire, kind of as at the forefront relative to the town. And I think as you're refining the format for Q2, if there could be a way to kind of daylight that a little bit more, what are the Woodside Fire and CPAW things versus the town things, I think that could be helpful. At least it was helpful to me when I was going through this with Jeremy to really understand the primary owners and leaders of all of those things. The other format thing has to do with 3B and thinking about comms. And we've talked a lot about comms over the last couple months. And a suggestion in terms of format here is to think about comms from inbound comms versus outbound comms versus the planning and building department comms, which is a whole different thing in and of itself. And I'd agree, of course, that we've had a lot of improvements, and thank you to Melissa for joining the team too here to help us along in terms of the outbound comms, or I'm sorry, yes, the outbound comms. I think I know Melvin, you're still working on the audit to really understand inbound comms and that kind of thing. So just a suggestion there, when you think about format, because there's so many different things that could go into this category, And that might be a way to organize it to really kind of reflect and measure the different things that are going on there. Another kind of smaller item for process improvement perhaps is in 3C. This has to do with COVID, but it's COVID, but it's also the pivot to hybrid work post-COVID that's going on, globally. And so you might consider expanding that so it's not just so narrow about COVID. And then, in terms of the updates, to be a little bit more specific about the various projects that are going there. I know, ones that are personally really important to me are the entry at Town Center and VoIP for hybrid work and that kind of stuff. So adding that kind of detail for the next update would be helpful. And now to kind of my high level comments, the biggest issue that I think, we need to flag as a council is related to 3J. And it's kind of a circular reference back to the comments about the amount of work that has to get done within this tiny little staff. And one of the things that I've been continually concerned or kind of flagging since I joined is how much work we have to do with so little staff. And I know one of the prides of the town has historically been having this, small staff, but I feel like at this point, we have so much going on, so much drinking from a fire hose from a regulatory standpoint, things that come down from the state, so much complexity that we need the staff so that we don't have the bottlenecks, that we don't have the wait times, and all of that. And I know you guys have heard me talk about this quite a bit in mayor, vice mayor meetings, but I think we really need to figure out how are we going to get the resources to fund the staff for the amount of work that we have to do. And to me, that's not little nips and tucks from fees and this and that. I think, what I think the council really needs to do is have a strategic conversation. When I was talking to Melvin, he was saying, the way I said, how do communities, other than taxes, get more resources? And really, what I heard from you, Melvin, it's either taxes or it's sales revenue or, income from sales revenue from having more businesses. I think it's an important big picture conversation for us to have as a council and a community, how we're going to get more revenue essentially in order to support the staff that this community is going to need. So that's the highest level comment that I have to make. And I think a really important area of focus in the months to come. That's it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Mr. Mayor, if I'm happy to hold my comments till the end, but there was a few, I think, pieces of information I'm happy to share based on the Vice Mayor's comments. Perhaps most importantly, we'll be holding a mid-year budget review in January with the council. I believe that's the second meeting in January. And at that time, I think there's opportunity to have a more detailed conversation around the revenue staffing circular set of issues. As you can see in 3J, there are certain revenue sources that we're exploring, but as I've expressed in the past and probably inelegantly, there's no magic bullet. This isn't, we were able to just come up with an extra $1 million without having a very serious conversation with the community. And it does get back to what kind of service the council expects on behalf of the community that the town staff provides. I mean, just to give an example tonight, this is something new that we didn't do before. The newsletter was something new that we didn't before. We didn't have a town lobbyist that we work with regularly. There's all things that have happened in the last year. I could probably create quite a list of the new, if you will, projects and initiatives that we've undertaken with essentially the same sized staff. We have done some increases. This current year has the most FTEs that we've ever added. And we've, had a few in the past, but it's a challenging conversation, I think, in particular, because it's very easy. I'll just speak for myself. It's very easy as town manager to go to a staff member and say, "Well, just do this little thing. It's an extra thing." they add up very quickly. And in particular, when we're taking on massive projects like the housing element, it does not take much for cracks to appear in that armor related to making sure that we're getting everything done. That's just, I think, the human nature of it. So that was really what I wanted to say. I greatly anticipate that conversation with the council, because I think it's really important, and I hope that we get members of the public who come to be part of that discussion, because I think it's very important for folks to know, and this is one portal into it through the council priorities, how much we do on a regular basis, and how much more that we're adding. And if it's not a value add, then we should certainly do something different. Thank you.
Thanks. Marianne, I can't tell if you have your hand. Oh, you do have your hand up. Okay. Couldn't tell if you had your hand up, if you were wiping your brow. Go ahead.
I agree with everything that's been said tonight. We are a small town doing big city work. And I believe this new way, this quarterly report that you've all been working on, makes that really clear to the community, because you can see all that our tiny staff does. I also am really glad that Sarah brought up this critical problem of, if we're going to do all this work with the same tiny amount of staff, it can't work out. We need more money. We need more resources. So that's going to be a very serious conversation that the new council will have to have next year. But Ann Wingert was talking about it before she left. So this isn't coming out of nowhere. But Melvin, great job. And Sarah, I see you in this. Great job.
Yeah. I think this is fantastic. I think we started talking about this, Melvin, right around when you came on board. And at first we were sort of, I think Sarah and I were talking about stuff, and you guys were looking at us saying, what is it they want? We, went back and forth on it and tried out a couple things, and some stuff didn't work and some stuff did. And it's been a great process, I think, to go through and get to where we are now, where, I think we have what we set out to get, which is visibility kind of across the organization at a high level of what's going on, what are all the things we're working on, where are they, we can see what might be falling behind relative to what we thought, what's maybe ahead of schedule, how much work is involved in some things that we thought might be simple, or how simple some things might be that we thought were complex. And that's really a visibility into how, town hall works, and how you guys have to have staff is dealing with the projects that we throw over to you, and we think, hey, this would be a great idea. Why don't you just do this? That, we could understand in discussions with you about specific items, but fitting that in the context of everything that's going on, and how all the pieces interact, and how if you, add another piece of work over here, it's going to slow down this other piece of work over there. We have much better visibility of that now than I think we've ever had before. And I think that by itself is going to be, it's going to make, priority setting for next year and future years easier. It's going to make budgeting easier. It's going to make it easier to have conversations about staffing levels and revenue and all of the other stuff, because we finally are in a place where we have all of this. Well, it's not one page, it's a lot of pages, but all in one place where we can look through it and see all the stuff that's going on, and be able to kind of think through all of it at once, rather than individual little point problems, or putting out a fire here and a fire there and not having that comprehensive picture. So I really appreciate the work that you guys have done to learn and understand what we were asking for, and then put this product together. I think it's really, really great, and I think it will be enormously helpful going forward, and only get better as we go forward and we start understanding how to use this better, because this isn't just a report, I think, that shows us what's going on. It really is a valuable tool in helping the council, direct what's going on in town, and understand it, so that we can say, oh, okay, let's do this faster, let's speed that up, let's slow this down. And that's really powerful. That's, you know, that's what our job is ultimately. And being able to do that in a way where we have better visibility is enormously helpful. Sarah.
Just another format suggestion for consideration for this is looking ahead. I know there's items I know that you guys don't want to add to this already ridiculously long list and tremendous amount of work we have to do. So I'm not asking that. But one thing that might be helpful now that we have this format is to add at the end, kind of like parking lot or future project lists. So things that come up so that we're at least capturing it. And then we'll have it, you know, all in this one stop shop place as we do the planning, budgeting, planning and whatnot for future years. So just a suggestion.
We call that a backlog in project management parlance. All
That's
you're
a
not
great
actually
suggestion.
working on, but you might someday.
Sarah, that's a really great suggestion. You know, and one thing that I should have said a little earlier, and I just and I think this is going to be, this should be an evolving conversation. The work there's a pie, and there's slices as it relates to the work that happens in town, and one of the slices is staff. Another slice are the official volunteers through committees and commissions. And then there are other volunteers that participate in different ways. So our ADU ambassadors, for instance, and the like. We have a slice that's our issue area experts we bring in as it relates to consultants and the like. So this isn't about one of those pieces of the pie doing more than any other. This is not about those kinds of things. And it's about everyone working together towards the common council goals.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those folks have a role in any initiative, particularly any large initiative. You know, something like the housing element that starts from a legal framework and a particular expertise. So that makes sense to start with staff and consultants. And then there's others that don't require that to begin. So some of the design guideline work that we've asked the ASCC to do, that is not a staff-led effort. That is something that makes a lot of sense to have at that community level, at the local flavor and local knowledge. So that's always something that we're considering as well. Which are there items here that are well suited for volunteers to help us with, or consultants, or continue the staff level? Thanks for letting me say that.
There's one other comment or thought that I have in looking at this, which is, have you talked about this with your peers in other towns? Have you talked to them and said, hey, we've done this thing and, you know, our council thinks it's great. Have you ever thought about this? Or do you do anything like this? I mean, you probably did some of that, I would guess, Melvin, while you were sort of thinking through what the right tools and the right way to capture the information and present it was. But have you shared this report with any of your colleagues in other towns and just said, hey guys, what do you think about this?
I have not shared this report with any of my colleagues in other towns. However, I am familiar with other towns who do similar things, and I've led similar processes in different towns. So this idea of project management and managing a strategic work plan or council priorities is something that a good number of communities are doing. I think that those communities that do employ this approach definitely have the ability to better monitor and better manage kind of their workload and ensuring that the community's priorities are being worked toward, and communicating that, right? Like, it's not only, oftentimes things are getting done, but because you're not reporting on them, people assume that projects aren't receiving the amount of progress that they could be. So yes, there are communities that do similar things. No, I have not discussed our specific work plan with them. But I do notice that the communities that have work plans and report on them regularly have a greater level of community engagement and awareness of what's going on. As well as, like, for me, the biggest benefit of a tool like this is when you lovely council members come and say, like, I'd like something else to be done, And we say, okay, well, we're doing all these things. We only have these limited amount of resources. What would you like to deprioritize to be able to take on this new initiative?
Mhm.
It just brings a level of knowledge to the conversation that, okay, in order to get what I want, I need to have additional resources or to change some different priorities. So I think that helps make a lot of progress.
I agree. Okay, thanks. Okay, any more council comment or thoughts on this one? We don't need to act to accept this or anything, right? I mean, it's just a report and we'll get another one next quarter.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And thank you, Melvin. Clearly a ton of work and I think a great result. Okay, and that brings us to same team again. Study session on administration department overview.
Thank you very much, members of the council and Mr. Mayor. So as you know, Melvin Gaines is assistant town manager. We're also joined tonight by Brandy DeGarmo, the assistant to the town manager. She actually reports directly to Melvin. I'm going to be very brief here because I think that the staff report outlines, who we are and what we do. And I just wanted to focus on a few elements of that. First, there are 6 of us who function in the admin department. If you do not include finance, and you've heard from finance before in a similar presentation. We are the catch-all. We are the folks that are the glue that holds. My cat has just decided to join the presentation. Put her down. We're the glue that holds together the town government. We interact and interface between different departments. We work on multi-department level projects. Anything that doesn't fit neatly in a siloed box comes to me and Melvin, and we make decisions on how to work on those issues. So anything that has to do with non-planning and building, non-public works, we interact with residents on those issues. We spend a significant amount of time speaking to our colleagues, speaking to other government entities on the issues that we're coordinating on and bringing that information to the council. So I like to think of us as that sort of unique landing spot that has a responsibility to keep moving the ship of Portola Valley government forward and ensuring that we're accomplishing all of the goals of the council. The challenge is, I think we were speaking to it earlier, is that expectations naturally change over time as it relates to the type of work that any government entity is doing. It's a unique experience in Portola Valley, given that we're doing much more than we've had done in the past. When we compare ourselves to other similarly sized cities, we're certainly engaging in a variety of different ways that those cities are not engaging with the public on a regular fashion and taking on a number of projects at the same time. The flexibility is key to what we do. We're certainly, I would say that we're generalists, but we're not a mile wide and an inch deep. We're a mile wide and a mile deep, given what is a fair expectation on serving the community on some very complicated issues. This we had no intention tonight to bring data because we're not really collecting data about what we do. And I think at this point that any data that we would collect would be more of a what notion without any context. So if there's data that the council's looking for us to start to collect related to what we do in admin, we would love to hear about that tonight and see if there's ways to bring that forward to you. But it's not like the planning department where I can share with you the number of permits and the number of people and how many hours those things take. Our every day is unique for us. And maybe to pull the curtain back just a bit, by the nature of the daily interactions, whether it's internal or external, most of the admin team has to build in some time for those unexpected things that occur on a regular basis. I typically build in an hour or two where I've got more flexible work product that isn't required to be completed in a very timely fashion tomorrow or the next week. And I do my work then, knowing full well that someone will come in and there will be an emergency, an issue, member of the public that wants to come in to talk about something and the like. It's a pretty exhaustive list of the items that we manage on behalf of the town. Certainly some of it is internal, related to just making sure that we're efficient and doing this at the most in the most cost-effective ways. So things like IT, human resources. The emergency preparedness function is obviously an enormous component of what I do professionally and what much of the admin team does professionally. And that's grown increasingly complicated in the last number of years. I would say partially due to climate change, partially due to people's understanding of these issues and how they affect the community, and how the science related to how we deal with it and the technology and how we deal with it has expanded. So with that, I'd like to just open it up to any questions or comments that the council may have about what we do. It's tonight was really just that introduction. We take it for granted that people know what an admin department does because we are steeped in it. You know, tonight is hopefully the first step in bringing a little more transparency to at least the what part. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this, as with the previous presentation, is very helpful for understanding the full breadth of everything that's going on. And again, with a very small number of staff managing all this stuff. So are there any council questions? Nope, I see not shaking heads. Okay. I will go to public comment then. Is there any public comment on this item? And I see Carolyn's hand is up.
Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation, Mr. Dennis. Melvin Gaines, you're new to this town. Please understand that we have raised issues for the last 5 years. Priority has been focused on building new housing, but all the other issues that we are facing, the residents are facing in the last 5 years that were supposed to be addressed are just being ignored. I find it very unacceptable from Vice Mayor Sarah Warnikoff to say that, you know, she has been engaged. No, you have not been engaged. And I hope you will address our issues. You are in our district. This is the core of Portola Valley. We have major issues with internet. We have major issues with reliable energy. We have major issues with water. We have major issues with water pressure. We have major issues with traffic, and none of this has been addressed. Yes, we have worked with Mr. Jeremy Dennis for the last, more than 5 years. We did not have any issues prior to 2015 with a deficit, but now we have a deficit. None of the issues that we report to town council have been addressed. It was all prioritized to the town council's priorities, and that was promoting Peninsula Clean Energy. Peninsula Clean Energy, before that, we were supposed to have an independent energy. We were supposed to have an emergency shelter. None of that was resolved. But instead, we went with Peninsula Clean Energy. Most of the residents don't even know that they were transferred from PG&E to Peninsula Clean Energy because it's the same billing system. We had a presentation a few weeks ago from Jane Pepper, the president of Peninsula Clean Energy, who claims that we have more renewable energy, but nobody has the data. We all contribute because we're an affluent city to protect others, but there's no reliable energy in Portola Valley. There's no reliable internet. There's no reliable any services. And so again, you know, when Mr. Dennis promotes a cost-effective
Carolyn, you're at
services,
3 minutes.
we have not seen any services. And I have addressed this on several occasions, and all I get as a response from town council is, yes, we will give them a raise increase and we will give them, you know, their benefits. It's pathetic. And it has to stop. We need accountability.
Carolyn, you're now at
accountability
3.5
this year.
minutes. Please, could you wrap up?
Yes, we need accountability this year for all the promises that you have done for the last 10 years. Nothing has been accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I know that staff has been working extensively with you on many of these issues, and some of them have not been fully resolved to your satisfaction. A lot of that is because they're out of our control. We are not the water company. We are not your internet provider. And so there's a limited amount that we can do to actually help with some of those issues. Jeff, I see your hands up.
For the record, Peninsula Clean Energy provides exhaustive data on its energy acquisitions, and it's on the level of renewables that we're procuring on behalf of Portola Valley.
Thanks, Jeff. And again, I would repeat that Sarah Warnikoff is not your district representative. We do not have districts in Portola Valley. All council members are at large and represent the entire town.
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
just a slight correction. The town has run budget deficits before.
Yeah. Thank you. Next hand I see is Rita.
Hi, after the last agenda item, my hand was up and the public was not called on. And I just want to answer that question, which I guess it ties into this one. I wanted to comment on how we're going to pay for all this, because it's really two things together. And as a fellow resident that received my tax bill in the past month, you know, you're talking about all these different things and how we're going to pay for it. But before we then figure out how we're going to get more money from the residents or from businesses, we have to balance our books. We have not had a closed audit since 2019. We haven't had year-end financials. I'm personally concerned about what will happen to this town with our COVID monies that we most likely have had to send in quarterly reports. And, you know, before we increase fees to the residents, to the businesses that are in town, or take more money out of the reserves, we have to balance the books. We have to then actually communicate that, not just promise that for the past couple of years. And it's not like the residents have not been asking. You know, this is an incredible, wonderful, beautiful town. And we try to be financially responsible as residents. But before we then plan on how we're going to increase fees for the residents, increase fees for the business people, please, let's clean up the books so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Just to clarify, we did have a public comment period on the previous item. A number of people spoke. I think I closed the public comment period and your hand may have gone up after that once it had gone back for public to council discussion. Jeremy, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. As I've expressed in previous meetings, including finance committee meeting that I believe that some of the residents who are on this call tonight attended, described the challenges associated with the previous audits. However, the town can budget on an annual basis without an audit. The audit helps us understand how well we did with the books in a year. Books are closed. As I wrote to a resident yesterday, excuse me, it might have been today, yesterday, you know, we've been in the stages of closing out our 1920 audit for about 2 months. Much of it was released in draft form last month. Our auditor stated for the record in the finance committee meeting that there were no material defects. I think it's also worth noting that a city in California typically collects 7 to 10 cents on the dollar of the taxes that a resident pays. So the amount of money that the town gets from residents as it relates to the total amount that a resident pays in taxes is actually fairly insignificant. That used to be different 40, 50 years ago, but that's certainly changed. Thank you.
Thanks. And Melvin, I see your hand also.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond to Ms. Ratongan's comments about the town not being able to respond to her concerns. And you are correct. I am new and I'm not sure what your concerns are. I'd love to hear more about them sometime. I understand that my colleagues in the town have spoken with Ms. Ratongan. However, I do want to point out to Ms. Ratongan and all the members of the public that this council priorities process that we reviewed in the last item is designed for the council to be able to decide which projects would rise up to the level of being a priority for the town in a given year. And this year, since I've been here, we had a committee and a commission workshop to talk about priorities. And that was in January, January 26th. February 9th, we had a study session where the council discussed priorities and public were able to discuss that. And we also finally adopted the priorities in March. So it was 3 opportunities, as well as some committee and commission meetings where those are designed for the public to be able to state what they believe the town's priorities should be. And if there's a big level project that you believe the town should undertake in any given years, I encourage you to engage in this process. And again, the current year, that was January 26th, February 9th, and March 9th. And we'll be publishing the schedule for the FY 23-24 council priority process as well. So I strongly encourage all residents to engage in that process and let us know what you believe our priorities should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Melvin. Okay, I see no more hands raised from public. So I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Any council discussion on the administration department overview? And again, I can't see John and Marianne. For some reason, the default camera seems to go to either Melissa or Sarah and not the other 2 of you.
John and Marianne are just very quiet tonight.
They're not
That must
raising
be it.
their hands.
Not raising our hands, no.
Okay. Well, thank you for the presentation, Jeremy. Again, I think this, along with the previous item, really gives a much better sense to, I think, members of the public who may not fully appreciate everything that the department does and what exactly the glue, as you described it, is, and where all of the stuff that is not, I mean, everything that's not construction and planning and fields and roads is basically falls on you guys. It's kind of the everything else department, and everything else, as we've seen, is a long list of stuff. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and that brings us to Council Liaison Committee and Regional Agency reports. Marianne, do you want to go first?
Hey, can I interrupt really quick? Any chance we could take like a 3-minute break?
Yes, why don't we do that? Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll be back at 12 after 9.
How you doing, Mary? I'm good. Good. I don't, you know why? Because I said it, you might, you know what the password is for the Wi-Fi? That's sweet.
1919.
Okay, it looks like everybody's back in the council chambers. Is Jeff back?
Yeah, I'll be right there. I'll be right on camera in a sec.
Okay. All right. I will call us back to order then, and we are on item 8. We didn't stop the recording, did we? Nope. Okay, so the recording is good. And Marianne.
Alrighty, I have a lot, but this is the last time that you will ever hear from me. So,
In this format.
yeah. Yes, in this format, reading these reports. I'm not like moving to Antarctica or anything. So I went to the Working Together to End Homelessness Summit at an airport hotel on Friday, the 28th. And this was a huge group of people, and a lot of them had been working together for a while, but this was the first summit I attended. And it included an opening speaker who was Kevin Fagan from the San Francisco Chronicle. And I don't know if any of you read his series where he followed a homeless person. So he spoke about that. And then there was a panel with Lourdes Castro Ramirez. She's from State of California, Secretary of the Business, Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and then Assembly Member Phil Tang, who's in District 19. And it was moderated by Davina Hurt, who is a council member in Belmont. And they talked a lot about, let me try to remember, so much stuff. They talked a lot about the governor's commitment to homelessness and all the programs and things that have been done, and just a lot about, you know, the jobs to housing gap. They talked about the Home Key program because that had been successful. That came during COVID. And will Home Key continue, things like that. Then there was a tabletop activity. That's where at your table, you get a question and you all work on it together. And then we went back to, oh, there was a client story. That's right. There was a film and there was a gentleman who was in the film who had been homeless and finally had been able to secure housing. Okay. Then there was lunch, and the keynote speaker was Jackie Spear, and she was dynamic as usual. She said there's no issue more important in our county right now than the issue of homelessness. It feeds into all the other issues. And she talked about how we don't really see homelessness on the streets in San Mateo County like you would in San Francisco and San Jose, because people are in cars, people are couch surfing, but they are there. And we all have an obligation to address this. She talked about how she spent a night in a homeless shelter and talked about the people she met. And they were working class people who through illness were losing jobs, had become homeless. And at the end, she challenged us to do more. It was a really good event. And at the end, we all filled out pledge cards with things that we were willing to do. And I will continue to work on it, even when I am not on the council. And if any of you are interested in working on this, just contact me and I can get you in touch. Then there was a Council of Cities meeting that night. It was in Burlingame. It was at their new community center, which is lovely. And the speaker was Lynn Matterman, the CEO of One Shoreline. As you know, I used to be on that board. And he gave the history of One Shoreline, how it came about, what their mission is, what their projects have been, what they're planning to do in the future. He also talked about how they had thought about going out for the parcel tax this year and chose not to. And they have enough money to get through it was 2 or 4 more years, but they are not coming to the cities for money. So that was good news. Then on Halloween, I had a subcommittee meeting of the Resource Management Climate Protection Committee. This came about because at the RMCP meeting, Donna Colson, who was on the board, on the committee, excuse me, who was a council member in Burlingame, who had a career in managing pension funds, talked about why can't we basically green CalPERS, you know, somehow leverage all that we have with CalPERS and say, you've got to, you know, build, you've got to electrify, et cetera, et cetera. So from that, Donna and I met with Kim Springer and Sean Charpentier from CCAG to talk about possible legislation that we might want to sponsor. So we talked through the whole thing and went away with our walking orders, which was Donna and I are going to meet with people and Sean and Kim were going to talk to the lobbyists, and they did. And legislation is not going to happen right now. And I will report on something that I happened to learn about this subject when I went to Stanford Global Energy Forum Innovation Day on November 1st. And this is an annual event, although they haven't done it for a couple of years because of COVID. And I think I've seen Jeff there in the past, that the Precourt Institute for Energy sponsors, and they're a part of the Dorr School of Sustainability at Stanford. This is a gathering of engineers and startup people way out of my league. I mean, super technical, but fascinating. And I tried to soak up as much as I could in my old and non-technical brain. But there was a panel that had startup folks and talking about, you know, what was your most challenging problem? You know, what are you doing right now? What are you going to do in the future? And it was interesting that a lot of these particular people were working on battery storage and materials for batteries, just a lot of work around the batteries. And then after the panels, they would have a lightning, what is it called? Lightning round. And then little companies would come in and do their little pitch for like 3 minutes. And there were a couple companies that were super interesting. Lightning talks, that's right. So this one, like, here's one called, where is that one? Maybe there were 2 rounds. It might've been the second round. I really like this one. Well, there was like a hydrogen platform technology for heavy duty transportation. There was Buzz Solutions, which safeguards the world's infrastructure. They work with the New York Power Authority, Venue, storage technology, lithium, talking about the shortcomings of lithium, et cetera, et cetera. So that was super interesting. And then in the afternoon, there were two panels. One was called Accelerating Speed, Scale, and Impact. And the panelists were Sela Killicoat, a venture partner from Breakthrough Energy Ventures, Vika Gupta, Shell Ventures venture principal. Probably people know this one. When I think it's HSIEH. Would that be? I can't remember how to pronounce that, but he's a partner at Kleiner Perkins, and he was really funny and very personable. And then Kathy Hanoun, who's the president of Dandelion Energy. And so they talked about all the things they're working on. And I did pull out one thing that I thought was good. There were a lot of young people in the audience. And so they tried to pitch a lot of their ideas to the young people. So the question was, if you could change one thing with a magic wand, and one person said, energy is a global problem, not a local problem. One person said, policy decisions that are making it easier to do clean tech. The one from Kleiner Perkins, the root driver will be education, how a university prepares for sustainability. Why not a class in sustainability in grade school? And then another person talked about the energy crisis. It took us 50 years to understand the difference between kilowatt and kilowatt hour. It took us 50 years to understand the difference between kilowatt and kilowatt hours. Can't take us that long to understand decarbonization. We should have carbon on our, we've got to get going. So it was just about how we just really have to accelerate everything we're doing because of the dire circumstances we're in with climate change. And then the next panel was about financing. And that's where there actually was a woman from CalPERS. Let me get her name. She is CalPERS private equity ESG lead. And ESG is environmental social governance. That's the new buzzword that a lot of people are talking about in their corporations. So I did get some information about CalPERS, at least in the private side, is trying to green it up. And then there were more lightning rounds. And I just wanted to tell you about this one company. Where is it? Kit Switch, modular apartment interiors to turn vacant buildings into homes for housing developers, contractors, architects, and they can just take this space that's empty and put these rooms in it. I thought it was just amazing. It's pre-installed plumbing and electrical. They can install it in one day. Anyway, it was fascinating, the whole thing. Okay, then on the 7th, I had the great opportunity to be able to interview Priya Fielding Singh, who wrote How the Other Half Eats. And she is a sociologist, ethnographer. She has a PhD from Stanford. She's a postdoc fellow. She has a postdoc from Stanford Medicine. She's extremely brilliant. And she wrote this book, How the Other Half Eats, The Untold Story of Food Inequality in America. And I actually interviewed her. It was challenging because I started with the questions they gave me, but it wasn't enough questions to fill the time. So I really had to be creative. Thank God I'd read the book and loved it. But I really recommend the book because it's not just about, what you would think maybe low-income people have poor diets. It is just not that at all. She interviewed 160 families. She embedded herself in the lives of 4 families. One was very low income. Another one was more like working poor. Another one was more middle class, and one was very upper class. I mean, she could have been a Portola Valley person. And it was, all of that, the book talked about gender and motherhood and the pressures that the society puts on mothers. And she even argued that the high income mothers are actually more stressed than the low income mothers. So I heartily recommend the book. And then yesterday, and John can fill in the gaps, we had our Race and Equity Committee meeting. They talked about, first of all, another event they want to promote. Terrence Elliott and the Naimani Ensemble, who I think were at one of the churches, correct? They will be at the Sequoias on February 18, 2023 at 3 p.m. And I believe the public is invited, so that would be great to get in the newsletter at some point. They need a new chair in January. Kim is stepping down. She will stay on the committee. So I think I got this right. Lucy's the chair. And who's the vice chair? Is it Kim or was it Judy? Kim. Okay. They went around and around on this. Then on their regular agenda, they reported out from our actions. They talked about the Fix in San Mateo letter that was sent. And I think most of you know that the Board of Supervisors met and they are moving forward on an oversight committee for the sheriff. And then they talked a lot about the land acknowledgement. One person was disappointed that we chose not to read it at every single meeting. And we tried to explain to them that this one person, that committees are advisory and the council doesn't always take the recommendations, but I mean, we did approve the land acknowledgement, thought it was great. And we did say we would put the land acknowledgement on the website and we put the land acknowledgement on all the agendas, and we will have a plaque. But we did go around and around about why we didn't choose to require it to be read at every council meeting. And I think she understood. And she might come back, they might come back in 6 months to the new council and pitch it again. Okay, what else? Lucy and Kim are still working on the town seal project. They want to bring someone in who professionally reviews public symbols. So we talked about that. They're also interested in the history of Portola Valley and the area beyond what Nancy Lund has. And they also are interested in doing a speaker series. And they're thinking of doing their meetings every 2 months instead of monthly. And also right now I am working on the San Mateo County Poet Laureate Project. As you know, I have been with this since it started, and I think we've had 3 poet laureates. So it must have been 6 or 7 years ago. So we're up for a new one, and I am reviewing applications. I think they're down to 7, very different pool of people than we've had in the past, much younger. So that is in process. And I have a whole bunch of meetings before December 14th. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give to Jeremy or whatever committee, anything that I feel is relevant to them. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Marianne, and we will all miss your council liaison committee.
No, you won't.
agency
But
report.
thank you for saying that. Even Ted Driscoll
well.
used to really get annoyed about my reports.
Well, they can run long, but they do
I
let us know what's
know.
going on in the county, and I think that's an important element that we will certainly be losing from next month. John.
Okay, in addition to race and equity, which Marianne described, we had the emergency preparedness last week. Talked about the switchover for SMC alert that's in the process. Saw some messages today about that. It's going from a different provider, and looks like it'll be a pretty smooth transition, and it will offer some new features that people that sign up for. There was discussion about the Ladris software evaluation of that will run evacuation scenarios, and it's primarily used for use prior to an incident, so you know how things might happen given different situations. So that's being evaluated. presentation, Vic gave a presentation of his presentation to us. It's kind of like being in one of those fun hall mirrors where you look both directions and it reflects for infinity. Anyway, sheriff's contract negotiations were discussed. And then subcommittees provided some information on a few different proposals. One proposal to provide a sticker, a luggage tag, or a magnet or something, or maybe all the above, to have people understand what their zone haven zone is, and probably along with a radio call number and SMC alert sign up connections, that sort of thing. They did a little bit of a discussion on the safety element, and looking forward to their input as a committee. And then noted that the SERP has changed its name to EPIC to avoid confusion with CERT, spelled with a T. So that's probably good thing. EPIC. It's no longer SERP, it's now EPIC, which will be probably a good idea, because I was always confused. No, never knew which one they were talking about. And then finally, Ray Rothrock has volunteered to take over working with with Cal Water to place the AM radio on Peak Lane if we would like him to do so. And that is it.
Thank you, John. Jeff.
Okay, Peninsula Clean Energy Board meeting happened on October 27th. I actually missed it. Craig, did you attend it?
No, I wasn't able to go.
Okay, but I'm still pretty involved with a lot of the activities, so I actually was briefed on a lot of it before the meeting. Couple of interesting things. One, we PCE approved 3 more carbon-free energy contracts, including one of our first large standalone storage contracts, a 50 megawatt, basically an offtake agreement for a 50 megawatt plant here in California. A lot of other basically storage and renewables plus storage projects are in the works. Interesting thing happening right now is that there's PG&E issued a guidance letter for its 2023 rates, and so we have this thing called the exit charge, which is what every PCE customer gets charged by PG&E for leaving PG&E. And it's fluctuated over the years. Sometimes it's actually sort of caused it's resulted in basically losses for PCE because we have to match PG&E's rate with the PCIA, the exit fee factored in. But for the coming year, there's a good chance that the rate's actually going to go negative. And the reason for that is that wholesale electricity prices have risen to the point where PG&E's sort of legacy contracts are actually in the money, so to speak. So it's sort of, in the short run, it's good because the exit fee is going to go negative or might go negative. But in the long run, it's a little bit of a concern because basically overall electricity generation is becoming more constrained, and prices are actually going up. This is largely because gas plants are retiring at a rapid rate. The good news is that the more renewables we acquire, especially the solar, wind, and storage projects, it's the cheapest power available, and we free ourselves from this because most of those legacy contracts are for gas plants. It's just a really interesting really interesting inflection point in the electricity industry in California. There was some forum discussion about this, and it is going to be a little turbulent. But there's a lot of guardrails in place and a lot of activity going on to make sure that transition is managed somewhat smoothly.
So
those PC, yeah.
Does a negative PCIA mean we are all going to get credits on our energy bill, or how is that going to work?
You might actually be getting a small credit on your bill for some time in 2023. It's not, the PG&E issues these advice letters and they change them many times before the rate actually gets implemented. So it's not a certain thing yet, but SoCal Edison is much better managed in terms of its power portfolio, and SoCal Edison's PCIA actually went negative earlier this year. So that actually has happened, and you actually do see a credit on your bill. But it's in the short run, it's good for PCE because we can actually our revenue increases as we match PG&E's. We match their generation rate net of the PCIA. So if PCI goes negative, we actually get a larger margin. So
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, you might actually see a credit on your bill from PG&E because the exit fee has gone negative temporarily. Let's see, Planning Commission met last Wednesday and went over basically they're now going through this sort of series of 5 meetings where they're going to basically be considering for the various zoning changes that go into place to complement the housing element plan. By adding new zoning at the same time as the housing element is adopted, we basically ensure that the any site that we add to our site inventory in the housing element has to have a zoning in place for it, or else sort of I'm going to get this wrong, but it's we lose control over how a project on one of those inventory sites gets developed if we don't have the zoning in place at the same time the housing element is adopted. So Planning Commission is going through that. They're doing their usual thorough, meticulous job of going over all the details of it, but they're planning to have all of that in place and a recommendation to us to adopt along with the housing element going forward. And those are the meetings I've had.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
I think the only meeting, and Jeff, I think you were in that meeting. We had a follow-up meeting with the ADU ambassadors with Laura, where she had an opportunity to review the work that they've done so far, answer some questions directly to them, and talk in detail about the survey. And I think it was a great meeting, and those guys are back working on some additional refinements. And I know they plan to have the survey ready for us to review at the December 14th meeting. So they are making great progress, and they're a great group. And then we have our HCD letter as of today, and we're really looking forward to the ad hoc housing element committee tomorrow. I believe it's at 6 p.m. So hopefully we will get a lot of people from the community to attend that meeting and provide feedback. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I had 2 BPTS. Let's see, there was sheriff's report on speeding and citations. Surprisingly few parking citations, but I think part of that is just the weather is getting winterier. There are fewer issues at Windy Hill. Let's see, other big things. The redwood tree at the corner of Brookside and Portola was discussed. And removing it, and it's about 50-50 in the community whether people want it removed or think that it's the most important tree ever and has to be kept. Then let's see, discussion of the sheriff's department contract. They didn't really have a lot of feedback on that, and so I think as that moves ahead, if there's specific direction or thought that we need from them, it may be a good idea to prompt them to think about specific areas, if there are any specific areas, as that is being worked through by the subcommittee, to ask more specific questions rather than sort of, hey, generally, what do you think? Because I think general comments like that are a little harder sometimes for committees to respond to. So if there's any specific thing to ask that committee, I think that would be usefully directed. And then the wildfire prep committee, they spent the bulk of the meeting talking about the safety element and specifically the wildfire areas of the safety element. A lot of it, there were a couple of comments on specific items, but a lot of it was more generally the committee sort of figuring out a process by which they will go through and first, collate questions from the committee to submit to staff by the deadline that staff has asked for any questions or clarifications, and then also for how to go about collating and kind of compiling all of their comments on the safety elements to be able to pull it together into a committee report on the safety element. So the process they settled on for now is to direct all of their individual member questions to the chair, who will basically assemble all of them into a list and then publish that with the agenda packet, so that then they'll have kind of a written list of all of the members' questions in one place that's in the agenda packet. So at their next meeting, they'll be able to go through and discuss it very efficiently, rather than kind of doing it verbally and not being able to see what the other commissioners or committee members have suggested or commented on and so on. So they discussed potentially doing it with the subcommittee, but they thought they didn't need a subcommittee to just do a sort of collation exercise. So the chair will be taking that on. They may do a subcommittee when it comes to time to do the sort of comments and drafting it up into a document and that kind of that latter stuff. So that was pretty much all they had time for. So they spent a good hour and a bit on that and ran out of time for the rest of their agenda. So they will take up those other items later. Okay. Is there any public comment on item 8? I see Betsy's hand has gone up. Go ahead, Betsy.
Yes, well, I did not realize until Marianne spoke that Thanksgiving precludes your second November meeting. So I really want to address the group of you council members. And as a group, I think you need a number kind of like our president, POTUS 46. So for tonight, I'm going to call you Council 22. And I want to thank you, Council 22, for representing us so well and for your long time service to the community, for your impressive work ethic and your evident rapport with one another. I hope after tonight, I'll be running into more of you on Portola Valley's trails and in all the familiar places. So between now and then, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving and sincere thanks.
Thank you, Betsy. And we will all be together again at the beginning of our December 14th meeting, where we have our traditional sort of end of year handover and everybody gets up and moves one chair to the left. And in some cases, people will be stepping down from the dais and they have an opportunity to speak and have public comment there. So we will be doing that on December 14th. So although this is the last time that the council will be together for the main part of the agenda, or Council 22, as you call us, we will still be back at least briefly together at the beginning of the meeting on the 14th. And I see no more hands raised, so I will close this item and move on to item 9, Town Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I only have just 2 relatively small items. In my interactions with the Woodside Fire Protection District and the CPAW, Community Partner Assistance for Wildfire, as you know, Woodside Fire had access to a grant writer that we utilize for a community wildfire defense grant that we hope to hear from at the end of the year. That grant writer, she's fantastic. And she and I have talked about opportunities for limited engagement on grants as they come up. So I'm likely to enter into a contract with Lori, is her name. She's a 25-year professional grant writer. And as she's explained to me, she only takes on those grants that she thinks will happen, which I love that attitude. So we're looking at least one opportunity in the late fall here. Secondly, the newsletter, we're in the next couple weeks or so, we're going to add a new feature to our newsletter that we're calling internally, Did You Know? It'll be at the bottom of our newsletter, and it will be just one line about various things that are happening in town that don't really require a longer paragraph or so. So for instance, did you hear that the BPTS discussed the tree at the corner of Brookside and Portola Road? Did you hear XYZ? So we think it's a way to capture some of the additional things that can sort of slide through our fingers and not get the attention that they deserve in the community. Melissa is working with Carrie on that, and that again will be in the next couple of weeks. With that, that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any council questions? Nope. Any public comment on item 9? And I am not seeing any hands raised, so we have reached item 10, adjournment. Thank you all for coming tonight, and see you all next time. Good night, everybody.
All right.
We're adjourned.